Sorry.
Thank you. That's all the time we had for this morning. Merci, c'est tout le temps que nous avions pour la conférence de presse ce matin.
All of us go to Florida. We don't.
Let's go to Florida, baby!
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Merci. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to all of you. I'm now in Brussels, and I've been on the road now for a couple of days. I was first in Paris just before the weekend, where I participated in the conference about the future of Syria. And I met many of my colleagues from the Arab world. And at the same time, also, I had key meetings with my French counterpart and the National Security Advisor for President Macron. Afterwards, I went to Munich at the Munich Security Conference. I met with an important American delegation composed of many senators from the Republican side and also the Democrat side that was headed by Senator Lindsey Graham. I also met Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State. Afterwards, during the course of that conference, we chaired also, I chaired the meeting of the G7 foreign ministers. And it was the first time that Canada was chairing a G7 meeting, as 2025 will be our year where Canada is chairing the G7. And I can answer any questions regarding that as well. I also had many discussions on tariffs, on Arctic security, and on the Middle East. And of course, we talked about the security of Europe and particularly of Ukraine. And also, I had the opportunity to meet with the Ukrainian foreign minister. Now, here in Brussels, I've had the chance also to meet with the High Representative for the European Union, Kaja Kallas. I met also with the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola. And finally, also this morning, I met with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. And now, tonight, I will be heading to South Africa, as all ministers from the G20 will be meeting in Johannesburg. And as chair of the G7, it is important for me and for Canada to be at that table. And I will be ready to take your questions.
She's gonna take a chance on peace. We're just looking for answers, gang. This is Question Period Canada.
When will the minister stop with their empty words and take action?
Hi, Minister. Thanks so much for taking our questions. I want to ask you about the Africa strategy. We have some stakeholders telling us that the strategy is going to be released this week, but they say it doesn't have significant spending because of prorogation. And I'm wondering if you could confirm whether the strategy is being released this week and how the funding will compare with the Indo-Pacific strategy, which had $2.3 billion.
First and foremost, when we will be launching the African strategy, you will be the first one to know. And so that would be the first part of my answer. Second part of my answer would be, when it comes to Africa, we've been investing more than $4 billion in Africa over the last 5 years. Canada is present and will continue to be present. And contrary to certain countries, we believe that international aid is important and will continue to invest in it.
And Minister, I'd like to ask about the negotiations with the European Union for a defense and security agreement. I understand that the negotiations are still underway, but I'm wondering about the focus of the agreement and the status of the talks. The EU deal with Norway was mostly about undersea cables. The one with Japan was about naval drills. So what's the focus of a possible EU security deal with Canada, and what are the timelines for those negotiations?
So, of course, I've had the chance to talk a lot about increasing our defense and security cooperation with European partners. We do that through NATO, and that's really important. And that's why the focus when it comes to defense and security talks with the European Union per se, it is true the fact of defense procurement and also being able to share more intelligence and information. I believe that we can do that rapidly, and I think that we're in a good pace. We're going at a good pace, and we're in a good place.
Thank you. Next question is from Tanda McCharles. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister.
Hi, Tanda.
Can you talk about why Canada's international allies have not been speaking up to oppose the U.S. 51st state talk? If you asked them to speak up publicly, or if you got an explanation from any of them about why they're radio silent?
I must say that based on my conversations with many European colleagues, many of them are not necessarily completely aware of what is going on, first in the US and second in Canada. Every country in the world is looking at its own reality, and Europe has its own challenges. But I think that we have had very productive meetings over the past week. It was necessary for me to be in Europe to tell them exactly what's going on, to make sure that we would coordinate on any form of response to tariffs, and that we would be together defending our national security and sovereignty. And in that context, I think that it was a wake-up call for Europeans to hear what we're going through. And also, I think that the Munich Security Conference over the weekend was also a pivotal moment for Europeans based on the conversation that the American administration is having directly with Russia.
In terms of your meetings with both Marco Rubio and the British government, I'm curious, since Keir Starmer's going to the US this week, did you convey to your British counterpart any desire to have King Charles speak up on this matter? And did you get any assurances from Marco Rubio that this is a talking point or a negotiating lever that the Trump administration is using?
I just want to understand your last question. What are the end of your question? What are you asking exactly? That so Marco Rubio.
So in the first, you had meetings with Britain and the American representatives there. I'm wondering, given Keir Starmer is going to Washington, did you ask for any intervention by King Charles? And as you spoke to Marco Rubio, did you get any assurance from him that the 51st state talk is a leverage or negotiating tactic?
Okay, I understand.
Right.
Listen, when it comes to Marco Rubio, we never had any conversations about the 51st state. And what I said to the American delegation when some senators were making jokes about it, I said it's not funny. And this is a question of respect of our country, respect of our leaders, and respect of our people. And I always answer the same thing, which is we will be the best neighbor, the best allies, but we will never be a state and we'll never be a colony. And you just have to look at a hockey game against any American hockey club right now and see how much Canadians have rallied up around the flag, and how much there is a sense of patriotism and of very strong national identity across the country. Canadians are proud people, courageous people, and they don't accept any form of rhetoric that is against our own identity as a country. When it comes to talking to the British monarchy, this has not been part of the conversation, but when it comes to talking to the British government, yes. And indeed, we're in close contact with the British government, with Keir Starmer. I'm having also a meeting with the British Foreign Minister when we're both in Johannesburg, and we are definitely working with them on the question of tariffs.
Thank you. La prochaine
A lot of rumors about her and Trudeau. I don't know if they're true or not, but this girl seems really simple when she speaks. She's the minister, I guess that's called global affairs now, but it traditionally had been foreign affairs. And when she speaks about these things, guys, like, I think we all get a little bit dumber, actually. Let's take a couple of looks at Melanie Joly. She is easy to look at, but very hard to listen to. So let's take a peek.
And
Do you want me to say that in English as well?
No, but thank you for asking.
Okay.
And my last question is just about LGBT advocacy. I know that the government had been looking at a possible envoy for LGBT rights. We know the US has just canceled having that position. There's a lot of discussion about the funding for LGBT people worldwide and what's happening with those programs. I'm wondering where that puts Canada, having a feminist foreign policy, chairing the G7. What is your broader thinking on advancing this issue, given how sensitive it is in the US right now?
Well, the U.S. will do what the U.S. does, and the Trump administration will take its own decision. When it comes to Canada, I've presented a vision of pragmatic diplomacy, where ultimately we're engaging with countries that we don't necessarily always see eye to eye, but we have to do so to defend our national interests at a time where, and you're seeing it even today, where geopolitical tectonic plates are moving, and it is affecting the security of all countries on earth. We will continue to fight for Canadian jobs. We will continue to fight for Canadian way of life. And ultimately, we will do that while having a very strong foreign policy.
Thank you. Peter Zimonich, please go ahead.
Hello, Minister. Thanks for doing this. In light of Donald Trump's and the United States' discussions with Russia on Ukraine, and Hegseth's comments that Ukraine can't expect to go to its borders, did Canada have any discussions with its European allies about continuing to support Ukraine in the absence of the United States' ongoing commitment?
Yes, we've had. We've had conversations with European allies at the EU. I've had conversations also in France. I've met with many European colleagues, and we've said we want to be part of these conversations regarding security guarantees. We've want to be part of conversations linked to more Canadians being involved in protecting Ukraine. And we want to be part of conversations about the future of the Euro-Atlantic relationship. And we know that Canadians are very supportive of Ukrainians themselves. We know that many Canadians have been inspired by what is going on in Ukraine because we know they're fighting for the right reasons. And we can't let Russia go unchecked. And that's also why I said when it comes to the proposal of having Russia part of the G7, I said, no way.
So you intend on pushing back against that, I presume. Can you tell us what commitments you've received from European allies in terms of continuing to support Ukraine? And can you also talk about, there's been a lot of discussion about Canada forming tighter economic ties with Europe, increasing trade, that sort of thing. We've heard about advanced military cooperation with submarines between Norway and Germany and Canada possibly. Can you tell us what the Europeans have told you about wanting to strengthen its relationship with Canada as a counterbalance sort of to what Trump's up to?
Thank you, Peter. Well, actually, it's as if you're summarizing my entire trip because these were the two main subjects of the trip. First was about how can we work together to counter tariffs? How can we work together to do more on trade and basically defend our people's jobs? So that was all about the different conversations I had. And the other issue that was really, really discussed was actually the future of Europe security, the future of our own security at home. How can we work with the Europeans? So that means the European Union, France, but also the UK and, you know, different key countries in Europe to make sure ultimately that we get closer on the security and intelligence side, and at the same time on defense cooperation. We're part of NATO, but within NATO, there are still lots of gaps in terms of how we work amongst each other and how can we exchange more information and how can we do more defense procurement and business together, and ultimately how we can be more united. So this is clearly part of the conversation. And Peter and I answered that, I think, in French, but what is really, really important to remember is, and that was my message, is Canada went through a lot in the past month when it comes to dealing with the American administration. We've been under threat of many tariffs against us, and we're the canary in the coal mine. And at the same time, we're the biggest trading partner, the biggest client of the United States. We buy more from the US than China, Japan, the UK, and France. And so we have really power over and leverages over the Americans. At the same time, I don't think Europeans understood what was really happening and the impacts of the new administration in Washington on American people and the world. And my job was to explain what was going on and to tell them that it's coming. And so that's why I think it was a very impactful meeting. Sorry.
Thank you. That's all the time we had for this morning. Merci, c'est tout le temps que nous avions pour la conférence de presse ce matin. This concludes the press conference. C'est ce qui conclut la conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Let's go for a spin. So, what do you think?
It doesn't matter what you think!
Sorry.
Thank you. That's all the time we had for this morning. Merci, c'est tout le temps que nous avions pour la conférence de presse ce matin. This concludes the press conference. C'est ce qui conclut la conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.